In a land where the winds whispered secrets through the trees and storms carried messages from the gods, there lived a girl named Adana. She was known for her beauty, but it was not her face that captivated people. It was her voice. When she sang, the air itself seemed to pause, the rivers stilled, and even the restless birds gathered to listen. One evening, as she sang by the river, a sudden gust of wind spiraled around her, lifting the hem of her dress and tangling her braids. The air thickened, charged with an unseen presence. Then a voice, deep and sorrowful, echoed through the wind. "You have awakened me." The villagers had long told tales of the wind spirit, a powerful being cursed to roam unseen, neither man nor god, longing for a voice to call his own. He had once been a mighty warrior, but for breaking a divine law, the gods stripped him of his body, leaving him to wander as the wind, unable to touch, unable to be seen, only heard in whispers and storms. That night, Adana dreamt of a man cloaked in wind, his eyes like swirling clouds. He knelt before her, his voice filled with longing. "Sing for me again, and I will give you the world." But when she awoke, she found herself no longer in her village. The sky stretched endlessly around her, the ground soft like clouds. The wind caressed her skin like unseen hands. She had been taken. Adana was no longer just a girl. She was now the bride of the wind spirit. Adana gasped, her feet sinking into the softness beneath her. She was no longer in her village, no longer by the river where she had sung. Around her, the world shimmered in shades of silver and blue, an endless sky with no horizon, no walls, only swirling mists and dancing lights. A breeze wrapped around her, warm and weightless, carrying a familiar voice. "Do not be afraid." She turned swiftly, and there he stood, the man from her dream. His form was ever-changing, his robes flowing like mist, his long hair moving with an unseen wind. But his eyes held storms within them. "You have crossed into my realm, Adana. You belong to the wind now." Adana's heart pounded. "You took me," she whispered, her voice barely more than breath. "I did not agree to this." The wind spirit tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "I have waited for centuries to find a voice that could calm the storms in me. When you sang, I knew you were the one." Adana clenched her fists. "And so you stole me away?" The wind around her stirred, restless, but the wind spirit sighed. "I did not steal you. I answered a call. When you sang by the river, you awakened my spirit. That song was a binding, though you did not know it." Adana's breath caught. Had she unknowingly called upon an ancient force? Had her voice sealed her fate? She took a step back, her bare feet barely making contact with the mist-like ground. "What do you want from me?" The wind spirit stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. "To stay, to sing, to be my bride." Adana's pulse quickened. The thought of never seeing her family again, never feeling solid earth beneath her feet, made her throat tighten. But beyond her fear, something in his voice, in his storm-filled eyes, made her hesitate. There was loneliness there, a sadness so deep it stretched as wide as the sky itself. A wind curled around her fingers like a gentle touch. "Will you listen to my story, Adana?" the wind spirit asked, "before you decide to fear me?" Adana hesitated, and then nodded. The wind sighed in relief, and so the wind spirit began his tale. The wind spirit's eyes darkened, and a breeze swirled around them, carrying echoes of a time-long past. "I was once a man," he began, "a warrior of a great kingdom. My name was Ayokanmi, and I fought not for conquest, but for love. Love of my people, my land, and—" His voice faltered, like a gust interrupted mid-flight. "And for a woman, I could never have." Adana shivered, though the air around her was warm. She did not know why, but his words unsettled her. "Her name was Aif," Ayokanmi continued, "a princess, promised to another. But we loved in secret, our hearts defying the will of the gods." The wind around them grew stronger, restless with his grief. One night, We made a foolish vow beneath the sacred tree of the gods. We promised to be together, no matter the cost. But the gods do not take kindly to broken destinies. They cursed us. Adana's breath hitched. What happened to her? The wind spirit's gaze drifted, lost in the currents of time. She was turned to stone, her heart frozen for eternity. And I was made the wind, cursed to roam endlessly, never to touch, never to rest. I was left to whisper in the ears of mortals, to rage in storms, to carry the voices of the forgotten. Adana wrapped her arms around herself. The story pressed against her chest like an unseen weight. And you believe I can break your curse? A gentle gust lifted her chin, forcing her to meet his storm-gray eyes. Your voice awakened something in me. Iokanmi murmured. When you sing, I feel whole. If you stay, perhaps the gods will listen. Perhaps they will undo what was done. Adana's mind raced. She had been stolen from her world, taken to a place where nothing was real, only air, mist, and the whispers of a spirit clinging to hope. And yet, something about Iokanmi's sorrow felt familiar, like an ache she had known all her life but never named. But could she give up her own life for the chance to heal his? Before she could answer, a sudden gust howled through the sky, cold and sharp. The air trembled with an unseen presence. She is not yours to keep, Iokanmi. The voice was ancient, heavy with power. Adana turned sharply, her heart pounding. Through the mist, a towering figure emerged, a being of shadows and light, its eyes burning like twin suns. The gods had come. The air trembled as the god stepped forward, his presence swallowing the sky itself. His voice was like rolling thunder. Iokanmi, you have defied your fate once more. Have you not learned? The wind spirit stood tall, the winds around him swirling in defiance. I have roamed this world for centuries, bound by your curse, but now I have found someone who can change my fate. He turned to Adana, his storm-gray eyes filled with something she couldn't name. She has the voice to awaken the heavens. The god's burning gaze shifted to her. And you, mortal girl, do you willingly stand beside him? Adana's heart pounded. She had been taken from her home, brought to this endless sky by a spirit longing to be free. Yet as she looked at Iokanmi, at his sorrow, his longing, she realized that she was no longer afraid. She had always felt different in her village, as if she belonged to something greater. Perhaps this was why. Lifting her chin, she spoke, her voice unwavering. I will stand with him. If my voice can break this curse, I will use it. The god's eyes darkened. Very well, but breaking fate comes at a cost. The sky split open, and the winds roared as the god raised his hands. The air around Adana thickened, pressing against her chest. A strange warmth spread through her, and suddenly, she knew. She had been here before. Memories not her own surged through her mind, visions of another life, another love. A warrior's embrace beneath a sacred tree. A whispered promise beneath the stars. A curse that tore two lovers apart. Ife, Iokanmi whispered, his voice barely a breath. Tears filled Adana's eyes. She had been Ife. She had been the princess who loved him, the one who had been turned to stone. But the gods had given her another chance, another life, without memory, until now. You were always meant to return, the god declared, but fate is not easily rewritten. To free him, you must make a choice. The winds stilled. Sing, the god commanded. Adana took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and let her voice rise. It was a song of love and loss, of broken promises and undying devotion. The wind carried it across the heavens, weaving through the stars, touching every corner of existence. The moment her last note faded, silence fell. Then, the air shifted. Iokanmi gasped, his form solidifying, his feet touching the ground for the first time in centuries. His body was whole. He was no longer wind, no longer a cursed spirit, but a man. And Adana. She felt light, as if she were dissolving into air itself. No. Ayokanmi reached for her, but his hands passed through hers. The gods had given her back her past, but now the price had come. Tears streamed down his face. I will not lose you again. But before she could fade completely, the god spoke once more. Because of your sacrifice, the curse is broken. The wind has found rest. A blinding light enveloped her, and when it faded, she was whole, flesh and bone, no longer fading, no longer lost. Ayokanmi crushed her into his arms, his heart hammering against hers. You came back to me. She smiled through her tears. I always would. The god, satisfied, turned away, his form vanishing into the sky. The winds calmed, the heavens stilled. For the first time in centuries, Ayokanmi was free, and Adana had found the love she never knew she was missing. Hand in hand, they walked toward the horizon, where the wind whispered not of sorrow, but of love renewed.